think you have a job on your hands, Thierry. Thierry is going to start the debate, and he heads up the banking initiatives for SWIFT by saying that everything will stay familiar. Thierry, over to you.
Okay, so this is a good day for old money today. Thierry Chilosi, I'm heading the banking initiatives team, so I'm on the commercial side of SWIFT. So obviously I can defend what the challenge will be. We were asked to give a bit of a 5-minute presentation of what each of the different companies that you will hear today is doing in the space of payments. So I will start with that one. And to tell you what SWIFT is doing about payments, I thought it's probably good I tell you who are the clients of SWIFT in that space, and a very quick highlight on each of those. So we are, if you will, some of the core of the messaging that connects all the banks together. So some of the biggest clients that we serve are the global transaction banks, for once, at least in the payment space. For them, it's really a challenge of running the bank, as some of them have quoted. A lot of regulation, so they don't have a lot of money to spend on innovative things. So this is where their focus is. The second actor that we serve is what we call market infrastructures. Okay, so like the Euroclear for us is a market infrastructure, or an RTGS system, or an ACH. Okay, in that space there is a lot of change. So old money is changing. Okay, there's systems that are being upgraded. There's regulation that is forcing change. We see, for example, in the space of high-value payments, a flight to safety. So more and more entities having to connect to these more traditional, if you will, payment systems. In the space of low-value payments, then there's a bit, the evolutive innovation is about how do you provide real-time payment, similar to what all of you know as consumers that the PayPal or Google can provide. So how do you do that in the existing information? So these market infrastructures, which are very, very important clients for SWIFT, they are modernizing. So old money is going forward. Okay. Another space of clients we serve is what we call other financial institutions. So they may not be the big global banks. They're the more regional banks or the more local banks. They themselves have a similar challenge of running the bank. So they spend a lot of their resources. It's about keeping up with regulation. And they tend to specialize. Okay? They tend to say, okay, either I serve a domestic market, I want to do that better. I want to compete in that specific segment. And so we, as a provider of services to them, have a challenge to keep up with what their needs will be. Okay? Another pool of clients that we serve is a bit, it's difficult to pinpoint them as a client. What we call, it's regional initiatives. Okay? The world is changing, the world is becoming more interconnected. And what is happening, for example, those of you in Europe, you've heard about SEPA. In Africa, there's 3 similar initiatives running to connect these countries together, make their payment systems more efficient. Similar things are happening in Asia with the ASEAN initiative. So the core of the banking system is evolving there. And sometimes it's evolving not by the individual players, but is evolving as an ecosystem as a whole. So this is another component, another client segment that we serve. Then we go into the corporate segment, which is quite important for us. You know, corporates are really a big driver of the payment volumes in the world, especially for SWIFT, because we talk about cross-border payments mainly. So the corporates, sometimes they're more cash-rich than the banks, yeah? So they have more liquidity. They're becoming more sophisticated with their financial instruments. And SWIFT is about automation. So what we're seeing is that those processes that used to be more managed, if you will, more manually, are becoming more and more automated. And this is why the corporate segment is very important for us. The corporate segment is growing in terms of interlinking, because corporates are dealing more and more with a global market, which means they deal more and more with global banks. Okay. And this is a segment that we are carefully monitoring. Yeah. The last one is a consumer segment, which we are not really present in. Okay? So I think the debate later on may focus a bit on that, but just for you to know, SWIFT doesn't serve consumers directly, even if I'm sure all of you have done a SWIFT payment before. So that's the segments we serve. which leads me to say, okay, what is Swift doing in payments? Because it's very much related to those different segments. A way to do that is, what is Swift doing for payments is, what does it take to complete a payment from the time you initiate it to the time you finish it? So one of the first things, at least from an infrastructure perspective, you need is a platform. Okay? So we are doing quite a lot in terms of helping our clients renew their platform, what I mentioned before. So the RTGS systems, the ACHs, the banks themselves. And we are modernizing our own platform because there are changes in the way that payments are exchanged, which require always keep up with security, somebody said. So we need to do that. Resilience, yeah. And make sure you're hacker-proof, but also make sure that the fact that all of us make payments, this is quite a simple concept, but the value in payments, some people say, is in the transaction that is, if you will, the reason for the payment. So we need to keep on making sure that the standards can carry all that information. Yeah. The second thing we do about to make a payment is you need to be able to connect to some kind of an ecosystem. In this case, you connect to the Swift ecosystem. We want to make that more inclusive. Traditionally, it's been only the big boys. And more we're going to need to give access to these systems by an increasing number of institutions, corporates or financial institutions. Okay. Then we have the standard. You're exchanging, a payment is a transaction. It's a medium of exchange. So you need to agree on how you're going to do that. And a few things are changing. The technical standards are changing to become more rich, but also the business standards are exchanging. And there I can take the example of trade. Okay, trade is a very old concept. You trade with your neighbor. You need a guarantee. You have corporates on each side. And traditionally, this was a very paper-intensive process. Okay. More and more, this is dematerializing, and you have to dematerialize in a world that has many currencies, many practice, many legal requirements. So on the business side also, so we have what we call the bank payment obligation, which is quite an innovative way to change the way that trades are conducted, make them less costly, more efficient. Yeah. Regulation, we are very, very much active on regulation because this is where the bulk of the spending goes. So just the regulation, the technical infrastructure, liquidity management is one, sanctions, and AML. In that space, we're very busy. After that, you do all of that. That's the core of the payment. So you comply, you channel the payments, you comply with the regulation. There is some value added that we can do. So business intelligence is a place that we're very active on. All the transactions on the SWIFT network are very much relevant. And in fact, we've just launched what we call, some of you may have heard, the SWIFT index that correlates the transaction of SWIFT with the growth of GDP. And so we have we have found a very high correlation between the two. And if you dig that further, a bank that is present on the SWIFT network, if it wants to know where is the growth on the network, then this is what we provide them. Are you as a bank doing the right thing? Are you in the growing markets or are you in the dying markets? Are you doing the right way? Yeah? So are you relevant on those corridors that are growing or are you lagging? And are you doing it better than your competition? Okay. If you have a closed network, you can't find that out. Yeah. If you're part of an open network, then you can start to have that discussion. Yeah. And then finally, I think it's worth mentioning also a bit the innovation side and the communication side of SWIFT. So we have launched a SWIFT Institute, for those of you that may know of it. So SWIFT is also, as a cooperative, trying to stimulate the debate, keep growing the knowledge of that. And so we are also very much investing, it's a bit our R&D arm, if you will, on the cooperative. So if you don't know about it, I invite you to take a look. The SWIFT Institute, there's quite some good topics that are being discussed there. And I will end with that because there's much more I could add, but I think that's a good tour of where we're busy with at SWIFT on payments.